I believe that we are best of service to our communities when we are committed to community service. And I don't just believe that as being a political or electoral thing. I believe that as actually doing the work for our communities. Hello everyone, my name is Christian Vitek and welcome back to Seat at the Table, a podcast where I'm going to talk about anything and everything in my life, and I invite you to come, sit down, pull up a seat while I put everything out on the table. Today I kind of wanted to talk through my experience in politics and public service. As I'm kind of brainstorming about it, I was thinking I really got my start in service and public service when I was in high school. I used to attend, and I know I've mentioned this in a previous episode, I used to attend youth leadership conferences, and they really set the foundation for a life led in public service and community service and in giving back. And so I really have those to thank for kind of setting the foundation for me. And I graduated high school, went to college, and I knew I wanted to go to college for political science. I went to UAlbany. Go Great Danes, anyone watching? I went to UAlbany for political science, and a lot of people kind of go back and forth. They go through like 5 different majors and seeing what works for them, and that's a very typical college experience. But for me, I knew exactly day one, I was coming into college, I wanted to do political science, and I was ready to put my head down and do the work and get that degree. During that time, I was able to have some really influential opportunities that helped me form how I view public service and how I view giving back to the communities that have provided so much for me. And as I was thinking about it, I think one of the first things that I did when I was in college, but not associated with my university at all, was I co-founded a progressive coalition back home called the Young Progressives of Delaware County. And it was a very youth-led movement surrounding local government accessibility and also social justice initiatives at the time. I viewed that as an avenue to get involved locally. I saw that as a way to see what issues and what issues were impacting people's daily lives and how we could make an impact in making those lives better and easier and more accessible for people. And I found that to be through local government accessibility, seeing what our local governments at the village, at the town, at the city level, seeing what those entities and municipalities are doing for us as people to ensure that our lives are easier, our lives are better, our lives are more affordable. And that's where you really see a lot of action and a lot of the stuff on the ground. That's where you see a lot of fixing of roads. I feel like I remember back home, posts would be a water main broke, so this road is going to be closed down. It's where you see what is going to impact you on the day to day, and it's where you can have a lot of influence of how you want to see your immediate and daily life altered. And so I co-founded the coalition. It didn't start necessarily as a movement, as most movements don't. It started surrounding kind of more of a local issue, and kind of was there is a want and a need for people to get involved with their communities. And so I look back on my time as a local activist and organizer with such pride. And some of the things that we did, we hosted a voter registration drive. And looking back now, it was during COVID. So we had masks and we were social distancing and we were writing postcards and registering voters and making sure that people were civically engaged. But I fully believe, and as I've mentioned already in this video, I believe that we are best of service to our communities when we are committed to community service. And I don't just believe that as being a political or electoral thing. I believe that as actually doing the work for our communities. And so alongside that voter registration and postcarding event, I helped to organize a county-wide food drive in Delaware County to ensure that towns and villages were filling their local food banks. I believe that we are in service to each other, and so alongside the electoral and the voter registration, we should be doing stuff that uplifts and impacts people's daily lives and their communities. And so we did that, and I remember a year or two after we initially launched the coalition, we did a movement to get pride proclamations passed in different municipalities, and it was so affirming to see, not only for me, but I think for a lot of LGBTQ plus youth, that their town or their village not only recognized them, but affirmed them and celebrated them. And, Pride Month in June is a nationally recognized month. It is a celebration of pride because of the hardships that LGBTQ plus people have faced throughout history and still in the time now. And so I was like, we should do something to celebrate, to say that this is a home for people of all backgrounds, all orientations, all identities. And so the Pride Proclamation movement was really a show of love to people in my community. It was also a direct impact in understanding how local governments work and what tools local governments have to make proclamations, make messages, make movement in communities. And, at the local level, I think a lot of the times in smaller villages and towns, we don't utilize all that is at their disposal to govern. And so I had approached my town board and I said, hey, I would love for you guys to consider passing this LGBTQ plus Pride Month proclamation. And I was met with the response that we don't really have a avenue for doing that. We've never done it before, which, why would we do it now? And I've always been a believer in, why are we just sticking to the status quo? Why are we not marching forward? Why are we not trying to make progress? Or even considering progress? And so, okay, so we've never done it before. Let's have a conversation about doing it. And so that's kind of where my foundation comes. It comes in the form of community organizing, rural organizing, and being deeply embedded with my communities and understanding the struggles of food insecurity, of homophobia, of transphobia, and seeing what was at my disposal at the time to assist those movements and assist things that were popping up and maybe not bettering the lives of people. They were making them worse. And so that's kind of where I got my start in progressive politics and in advocacy and activism. And then from there, I interned on a New York State Senate campaign when I was in college. It was then Michelle Hinchy was running for her first term as state senator, and I had never volunteered politically other than the coalition, which it wasn't very political. It was very grassroots. It was very community based. So this was my first step into kind of the political arena. And I interned on Michelle Hinchy's first run for state senate as an intern, a communications intern. And I cannot thank her team enough for where it has led me. And during that time, what the campaign taught me rural people could do, what rural people needed, what rural people can accomplish, and that no municipality, no neighborhood, no one is off limits in terms of needing help and how we can deliver that help to them. And it is such a pride point for me in my I always mention it, and Michelle is just a phenomenal public servant. And every time I have seen her in the last couple of years, she always made a point to say hi because she knows like who was interning on her first campaign, and those are the kind of people that we should be electing to public office. And I learned so much, and I learned graphic design. I learned what a political fundraiser was. I learned how to make my first phone call to voters, ensuring that they were registered to vote and they had a plan to vote. And it showed me it was another step. So community organizing, it was another step in understanding what electoral politics was and how that delivers for constituents across America. And so from there, that next semester, I think it was, I went from the campaign side for state senate to the official side for state senate. And I served as a session assistant and a legislative assistant for another state senator, Senator Elijah Reichlin Melnick. And that is kind of where I understood, you know, you have the community organizing, you have electoral, and then you have governing and legislating. And so I learned so much about policy and how a bill is drafted, how a bill gains support, how a bill becomes law. But being part of the process of moving legislation that will, kind of like I talked about earlier, have an impact on people's daily lives. It was so impactful as I was coming to understand that politics and legislation and governing could be an avenue, as well as mobilizing and organizing. It could be an avenue to bettering people's lives. So then in my head, as I'm a college student, I'm like, oh, okay, this is another way that people can make an impact in their communities. They can be a public servant and work for elected officials. And then on the other side of those offices, it's not just creating legislation, it's making sure that people are receiving the social services that they need, that is distributed from the state. And so you have a whole constituent services team that is making sure that people are receiving the care that they need. And so I really started to understand what an elected office was and what work and impact they can have on people. And so from there, I was like, okay, like I've been studying political science in college for semesters now. American politics and this country it's so hard at times, but it's so rewarding when you're able to move something and you're able to accomplish something and you're able to celebrate something and you're able to deliver results for what I'm concerned about for working families. And so from there, I went and I interned in the United States House of Representatives. From there, I took on more of an interest in communications and understanding how digital communications is impacting and reaching people, and how, because I believe there are people out there doing hard work. There are people out there doing hard work to make working families' lives easier, but none of that matters if working families aren't receiving the information that they need. And so communications, and especially digital communications, because I believe that social media and being online is the great equalizer. Almost everyone in America has access to the internet. Almost everyone in America has a phone to access that internet. And we create social media profiles and we connect with people, and it has become so connected in our lives that it has become a great equalizer. And so with social media, I found strength and kind of where I found my skills to really hone in of succinct messaging and really making sure that we were getting the message out to people. And I really was able to hone that during my time interning in the House of Representatives, because I was able to start to understand the difference between press and media relations and social media and there's so many different avenues, like writing speeches. There's so many different avenues for how communications plays into effectively getting a message out to the American people to ensure that they're getting, one, the information they need, and two, the resources they need to live easier lives, to live lives that are healthier, more fulfilling, more affordable. And I found my strength in doing communications and digital. And I really honed that during my internship on the Hill. And from there, I had a summer in between graduating college and that internship and the midterm elections, the 2022 midterm elections. And so I applied for a job where I coded, where I sat at a computer and I learned how to code and send emails out to help elect Democrats across the country. And it was not necessarily something that I thought, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. But I saw the value in getting a full picture of the landscape of what digital looks like in the field that I'm working in. And I really recommend that to people who are young and interning and working in trying to figure out where they want to fit in a field. Try things out. You'll know if it's for you. You'll know if it's not for you, but at least you can say you know. And so I found it to be fun. I found coding to be this thing where it was something that I would have never thought for myself. It was something that I didn't even know if I could take on, but I rose to the challenge and I learned how to code, and it has helped me become a better writer because you were really focused in on what coding you were doing, and attention to detail came a lot from that. And so I got through the midterm elections, and it was a position that was contracted just through the election cycle. And so towards the end of that job, I started applying for other jobs, and just like throwing my hat in the ring. And I fully believe that in the process of looking for a job, you should apply for things if you have 1, 2, 3 of the bullets out of the 5 or 6 bullets. Because not everyone that is applying is going to have every single skill. And if you aren't applying for a position that someone else maybe is, and they also don't fit all the bullet points, they have a better chance than you because you didn't even throw your hat in. So I was on LinkedIn, Indeed, and I was like, what's going to be my next job? And I applied to serve as deputy press secretary to the New York State governor. I went to serve as deputy press secretary for the New York State governor. And my gosh, what an experience that was. I am so thankful for my teammates who supported me and people on my team who guided me through the process of understanding what the day-to-day looks like for press. And if you don't know, press is, and I think I just kicked the camera a little wobbly, but press is how, in my view, how an elected official gets their message from the official side out to the public, or it's at least one of those avenues. And it's also what we see every day. It's what we see on TV. It's what we see in our newspapers, our local newspapers. It's what we see in news articles online. Press is kind of the function of that. The press as an entity are the ones usually writing those stories and forming the papers and the blogs and articles and the whole 9 yards. And then on the government side, it's how is the government working, or elected officials or their teams, how are they working with the press to ensure that, kind of like I said earlier, how is the message getting out there to working families and Americans and constituents that really, really need whatever's being announced, whether it's funding for their local communities, whether it's an increase in social services, kind of in that realm of things. And then I also got to see the other side of that, instead of just like writing press releases and statements and understanding kind of how paper was pushed, as to say. On the other side of things, I understood and came to learn what it was like to be a staffer for a principal, and how to navigate large events. I took part in staffing, the governor's State of the State addresses, excuse me. And huge, like, every politician in New York, every, elected state representative, like, in a chamber, and she's set to deliver her most, ambitious, forward-thinking, forward-looking address for what her plan is for the state. And those are moments, such pivotal moments, those bigger ones. Also, to be a young person in that role, which historically there's not a lot of young people at the table. There's not a lot of young people that have a seat at the table. And so at the time, I was appointed as the youngest deputy press secretary to the New York governor. And there was a lot of weight on my shoulders. There was a lot of responsibility that I felt that, when you are the first, you have a lot of pressure on you to do good, so you cannot be the last. And so in that job, and kind of the theme that I have when I'm working on behalf of so many people that need help, that need resources, and that are hoping for a better life, you put your head down and you do the work. And so that's what I did during my time with the governor's office. And it was an experience that taught me exactly how I needed to navigate the professional world that I was in and I'm set to be in for probably the rest of my life. If not working in it, being around it in the kind of environment. From there, I now work on a political campaign, and so I've kind of come full circle to one of the first opportunities that I've had to see how this all works. At a grassroots level, people who are in their day-to-day, they're running their kids to school, they're going to practice after, they're going to the gym, like, people are not tuned into what politics and government do. And so it's on us to be transparent, to be accessible, to be forthcoming with information when people are seeking it. And that's how I've always seen my career so far, is being accessible to the people, to constituents, to New Yorkers, to the American people. And so I feel very honored to have the opportunities that I've had so far, but I feel grateful because I'm working on behalf of people that I know need the help, need the support, need the resources. And I'm glad that I'm in the seat that I'm in to hopefully be building a brighter future that can deliver that. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about on the podcast today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, share on social media, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.